On a Friday night in 2021, a woman trained to read the smallest biological traces opened her laptop and felt her stomach drop. The case file was about Shandee Blackburn, a young woman stabbed to death in Mackay, Queensland. Inside the lab paperwork sat a phrase that can end investigations before they begin. No DNA detected. Kirsty Wright knew what fresh blood should contain. The silence on that page sounded manufactured. Wright wasn't supposed to be working at all. In June 2021, she was on holiday when journalist Hedley Thomas called, looking into Blackburn's unsolved murder and asking for an independent review of the DNA evidence. It sounded straightforward, an expert sanity check, the kind professionals do quietly. Wright agreed. Then the case followed her home and into her evenings. For years, she would later say, became consumed by what she saw. Results that didn't fit the science, gaps that couldn't be explained by chance. Before Blackburn's name entered her life, Wright already carried a complicated history with Queensland State Forensic Laboratory. Fresh out of an honors degree in forensic biology at Griffith University, she landed what she described as her dream job as a reporting scientist, processing evidence tied to criminal cases. The work was demanding, technical, and deeply consequential. Scientists in that environment don't just produce data. They shape what police pursue, what prosecutors argue, what juries believe. For Wright, the job also became a test of conscience. One day at the laboratory, she noticed a small, dark room beside the building's laundry. It was stacked with brown cardboard boxes. Curiosity pulled her inside. She opened one and found human bones. Then another. The scale shocked her. "These are horrible. There must be hundreds of people in these boxes," Wright said. Using new DNA analysis techniques, she spent a year identifying remains and returning them to families or descendants. It was meticulous work with a moral center. Names restored, grief given something solid to hold. Her career kept moving outward from Queensland, but always toward the same purpose. Wright completed PhD research using DNA profiling to identify victims of the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, traveling to collect samples from victims and reference profiles. She spoke of returning victims to surviving relatives as one of the most rewarding highlights of her life. In later years, she assisted Australia's Army and Air Force, applying DNA profiling and genealogical work to identify fallen soldiers from World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War, tracing them to living descendants. The pattern was clear. She used science to reunite the missing with the living. Yet when she returned to her regular job after the tsunami work, she said a change of management dragged quality downward. Wright raised concerns and felt dismissed. She was moved into an administrative role, isolated from peers, and forced into a decision that felt like betrayal either way. "I was forced with this decision of leaving this job that I loved or having to stay there and watching something I loved be, I guess, desecrated or vandalized," she said. Science is sacred. In 2007, she quit, taking a job at Australia's National DNA Database and, she said, never looked back. That long memory made Blackburn's file feel personal in a way Wright didn't expect. The laboratory at the heart of the cold case was the same Queensland facility she had left almost 2 decades earlier. On that Friday night in 2021, she sat down intending to watch a football game she'd been looking forward to. The game played on, untouched. Wright's attention locked onto technical details. Extraction notes, concentrations, reporting language. Then she reached the reported failure to obtain DNA from a pool of the victim's fresh blood. In her view, that wasn't just improbable, it was a warning flare. The file held a second failure. The laboratory also did not obtain a DNA profile of the accused man from his own car. Blackburn's ex-boyfriend was accused of her murder. Yet the DNA narrative presented to the court was described as inconsistent and confusing. The suspect was acquitted. Wright didn't treat that outcome as the end of a story. She treated it as the beginning of an audit. If crucial samples were handled correctly, why did they produce emptiness? If they were handled incorrectly, who else had been harmed by the same process? Wright began pulling at the thread that connected those results. According to her, fresh crime scene samples and rape kits had frequently returned, no DNA detected, even when there should have been enough cells to obtain a profile. She tried to disprove herself. She asked other experts to review her conclusions, desperately hoping she was wrong. The article explains, "Many hesitated," she said, "because they feared what involvement could do to their careers. But the more she looked, the more she believed the problem wasn't a single analyst's mistake. It was a system that could manufacture absence as policy." One failure point, Wright said, was a threshold issue. In a standard workflow, a lab extracts DNA, measures concentration, and then decides whether to proceed to profiling. It is possible to obtain a profile from a very small amount of DNA. But Wright discovered Queensland's lab had set its threshold at double the amount used by other forensic laboratories. Below that cutoff, staff would not proceed with profiling. On paper, that sounds technical. In practice, it meant a sample with DNA could be stopped early, then reported in a way that implied no DNA existed. That difference mattered because of what police and juries hear. Wright said investigators received a result of no DNA detected, even when DNA was present, simply because the lab did not proceed. She concluded it wasn't an accident. The threshold, she said, was set by management in a deliberate attempt to mislead police and reduce workload. No one would ever think an entire lab of scientists could operate in that way. It was absolutely unthinkable, Wright remarked. Her words carried the weight of someone who knows how rare such accusations are, and how heavy they become when true. In Blackburn's case, Wright argued, the court was led to believe the accused man's DNA was not found on the victim's body and the victim's DNA was not found in the accused car, when, in fact, the samples were not even fully tested. For a jury, that kind of "not found" can sound like exoneration. For a family, it can sound like a door closing forever. Wright said the enormity of what she uncovered was crushing, because the issues weren't limited to one case or 1 year. They stretched back across thousands of files. Then came the human cost that statistics can't hold. Wright described what her findings could mean in plain, restrained language, and it cut deeper because she avoided drama. It means that offenders have maybe been falsely acquitted. It means that offenders haven't been identified. It means offenders have raped and killed again, she said. At that moment, I felt physically ill. The work she once loved had become a mechanism capable of erasing evidence and reshaping outcomes, while victims and families lived with consequences that never appeared in lab spreadsheets. Wright and Thomas tried to raise concerns with the state government. They were ignored several times. So they forced the issue into daylight, using Thomas's podcast investigation into Blackburn's murder and a public press conference. The public nature of that move mattered. It removed the problem from closed meetings and put it where denial would require visible effort. Even then, the article notes, officials initially did not believe Wright's allegations and backed the state-run laboratory. For Wright, that reaction echoed what she'd faced years earlier. Warnings dismissed until damage becomes undeniable. The turning point came when police discovered DNA testing had been abandoned at early stages. They demanded that samples be completely tested. Wright said many samples came back with usable profiles once full testing was done, a stark contrast to the earlier wave of no DNA detected outcomes. That revelation triggered an official inquiry in June 2022. Unlike quiet internal reviews, an inquiry creates a record: timelines, management decisions, workplace culture, and the ripple effects across prosecutions and acquittals. The inquiry validated the core of Wright's claims. It found systemic failures, a toxic workplace culture, and maladministration in the lab that resulted in unreliable evidence being supplied to police and courts for more than 30,000 rape and murder cases dating back to 2007. The scale was staggering precisely because it wasn't framed as a single scandal. It was framed as a sustained breakdown in process and accountability. Years and changes of management followed. Meanwhile, Wright's own story turned into a rare full-circle moment. Today, Wright is assisting the state government in a complete overhaul of the forensics lab, implementing major changes recommended by her and other experts. She described being asked to help fix the system as both relief and responsibility. "I was just ecstatic and just so relieved, and of course said yes in a heartbeat," she said. Her motto, the article notes, is simple. If you can harness the power of science in your hands, you can do anything with it. In Queensland, that power is now being measured by a different standard, not how quickly a lab can close a file, but how faithfully it can tell the truth.